Wired into technology transformation, this is the Digital Bulletin podcast.
Hello, listener. Thank you for joining us. This is episode 16 of the Digital Bulletin podcast and the first of 2021. New year, same faces for us inside the pod. Digital Bulletin content director James Henderson. Hello, James.
Hello. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. And our CEO, Romilly Broad. Happy New Year, Rom.
Very happy, isn't it? It's brilliant.
I was going to ask how you're both doing. 2021 feeling any different, James?
Not really. I mean, well, I feel like I've said this so many times that obviously I could be completely wrong, but I do feel like there is some light at the end of the tunnel, but it would be disingenuous, wouldn't it, to come on and say that everything's fantastic. It does feel now, nearly a year into this time, it's hard, but we've just got to keep grinding away and trust that in 3 or 4 months it will look different. We've said that many times, but
you sound like Boris Johnson talking about light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, so that's quite offensive to compare me to that man. But yeah, I know what you're saying. I'm hoping. That's all I have.
Hope is all we all have, I think. Rom, do you have much hope?
Yeah, actually. Loads. One thing I've become quite good at, and I suspect that's true of most people, is peering through the darkness to snatch at threads of hope and light, right? So you sift through all the chaos and pain and find good things. So you can look at the surging increase of people being vaccinated and things, and you can see that there's an endpoint there, which is glorious, which is freedom. You can see. Well, maybe this is stretching it a bit, but there's an inflection point going on in terms of the world and how it reckons with itself, particularly with politics and in the US and everything. And hopefully we come out of this darkness into something of a better understanding of ourselves and each other. And so I'm hoping that by the time we get to the end of 2021, when we're talking about the things that we talk about, we're doing it in the context of a much more enlightened society that can refocus on important things like climate change and stuff like that. But we'll see, won't we?
And we might even be able to do that pod together rather than apart.
That would be amazing, wouldn't it? Yeah,
it would, wouldn't it? Yeah.
Wow, that got quite philosophical there. Thanks for that, Ron. Well, hoping to bring a little bit of light into your lives, listener. Today, coming up on the pod, we'll be doing some quotes market research with our panel on some of the more interesting tech and gadgets to have emerged from last week's Consumer Electronics Show. We will chat over our case study on Green Flag and hear from Eggplant CEO John Bates on the future of intelligent software testing. But first, here's some news. We had a very big story last week in tech. Pat Gelsinger, CEO of VMware, is leaving to become CEO of Intel. He's returning to the company where he spent 30 years earlier in his career. Gelsinger helped triple VMware's revenues during his 9-year stint in the top job. He starts back at Intel next month. Also recently, we saw Google finally complete its $2.1 billion acquisition of Fitbit. The deal had to clear various regulatory hurdles, but is now done. Google insists the acquisition is about devices and not data. See about that. Elsewhere, as President Trump's administration is dragged kicking and screaming from the White House, the US has shelved plans to block investment in Chinese tech giants Alibaba, Tencent, and Baidu. If you think that's the end of US-China tech industry wranglings, however, then I think you're wrong. We've also seen Qualcomm agree to buy Nuvia, a major move in the chip industry. Visa and Plaid terminate their $5.3 billion merger agreement. And Elon Musk's Starlink is to enter the UK markets with its satellite broadband. How exciting. Now, you can get a collection of the best reporting on those stories and many, many more via the Bulletin on digitalbulletin.com. But next, we are going to take a look back at the biggest virtual event of the year so far in tech. The Consumer Electronics Show, or CES 2021, was wrapped up last week. This is the time of the year where tech companies tend to get their customers very excited about new products incoming. Now, normally on this pod, we stick to the nitty-gritty IT stuff, but we're going to have some fun and get the thoughts of the panel on some of the more wacky gadgets and tech that emerged from CES. Virtual influencers, robot cats, chewing gum for gamers, smart smoothies. All of these were actual things that were actually showcased at the event last week. Maybe talk a bit about those later, but I think they're not quite as relevant. But I've got 3 products that I'm going to throw to Rom and James to see if they bite. First one. Now, face masks have become very much normalized over the past year, of course. One company is trying to solve the impracticality of a face mask with the mask phone. Now, this is a face mask that combines a mask with a microphone and earbuds into one, quote, streamlined design. Guys, what do we think about this? I mean, is this something, Rom, that you would wear out and about, do you think?
No.
No? Why not?
Well, I think there's something dystopian about the fact that people can invest in developing this kind of technology, because it basically says, right, there must be a long-term future for covering our faces with things like this. And I kind of, like our optimism conversation earlier on, I refuse to accept that's going to be the way it is. And I'm not going to allow that into my head. No.
Okay, James, can you imagine a real life scenario where somebody wears a face mask but also needs to have high quality audio and a microphone to basically speak to people?
I mean, I don't know why or what the issue is with a face mask and wireless headphones. It feels like it was a product that didn't need to be designed. Is that not already a thing? Yeah, I don't really understand. I don't have a look. How much does it cost, by the way, Ben? Do you know?
Well, I'm looking now on one of the stories I've pulled up here, but I can't actually see a price. It's probably like most of these products that CES showcases. It's probably not even in production. It's probably not even actually ever going to happen. It's probably just a gimmick that is trying to get clickbait.
Okay, yeah. Well,
Right
I don't really see the need. People, Bluetooth headphones are very reasonably priced now. Not most people have a pair, but many people have a pair. I don't see why anybody would buy this mask rather than just buying some Bluetooth earbuds. I don't get it. So not one for me.
But it's all in one, right? I'm going to play devil's advocate. It's everything in one.
Yeah.
But I don't need it in one. I don't understand it. What I would say is I have had headphones on with wires and put a mask on, and when you take it, I have forgotten that and then taken it off. They've got tangled up. But is it really that big an inconvenience? I don't know. Like I said, it's just not for me.
I thought you'd have been all over these, James. Rom, it is a strange one, isn't it? Because I think in a situation where you need to wear a face, maybe it's like in a future, maybe in the next few months where we kind of return to offices, but maybe have to wear face masks. Is that kind of use case for this, do you think?
No, I mean, one of the things that's probably true is that we're never going to fully escape things like coronavirus. It's safe to assume that while we might get back to a condition of relative normality, there's still going to be an endemic problem of this particular virus and its variants, right? It's something that's probably going to keep coming back. And so therefore, mask wearing, as it has in Asia actually for years, might become a much more normal part of how we go about our lives. Fine. So that's probably what they're betting on in terms of there being an addressable market for their kind of masky earphone thing. But I agree with, I think the essential problem is these masks, right? You need to wash them fairly regularly, otherwise they get pretty nasty. And I'm not sure. What do you do? Just throw this thing in your washing machine?
It says here that the mask fabric is retractable and is machine washable, so you can detach it from the tech and machine wash it. So that's that problem solved, Rom. James, can I tempt you into some of the other facts here? 12 hours of playtime on the on the headphones. It's water resistant and works with assistants like Amazon Alexa, Siri, and Google Assistant. Are we tempting you in?
Not really. I think that what I was expecting to see and it's related to face masks, is that I do think that, and obviously in Asia, face masks have been worn for a long time anyway, haven't they? Like this predates COVID. What I'm surprised we haven't seen yet is any technologies that can do face recognition with masks on, right? Because obviously I use a Apple device, I think you do too, and all of them are sort of unlocked by face recognition, and obviously they can't do that with the masks on. So I'm surprised we haven't seen anything yet. I don't know whether it be like an eye scanner or something like that. So that's a technology related to masks that I would be interested in seeing, but not a detachable bit of cloth with some cheap headphones on. No, not for me.
Right, let's move on to Project Brooklyn. Now, anything that has project in front of it is obviously going to be amazing / completely unrealistic. Now, this is, well, they call it a futuristic gaming chair, but I'm thinking about it in the context of a working from home individual who, is stuck in the same room, trying to be as comfortable as possible, working from home all day, every day. Now, for the benefit of the listener, this is a chair that is obviously highly futuristic in its design, but the main attraction is a 60-inch kind of wraparound LED screen, which sits pretty much a few inches in front of your face. Wow. Rom, I can see you sitting in this chair right now, actually. I can see you in that. Yeah.
Well, that's amazing, isn't it? You could literally make the rest of the world invisible and just inhabit Zoom permanently. It's like a full embrace of our new work from home kind of reality, where you actually just never leave it. Yeah, presumably it reclines, right? So at night you can just sleep. And then,
yeah, it comes with haptic feedback. Ron, what's haptic feedback?
It's when you get little vibrations through whatever device or technology you're using, your phone, when it does the little vibration things, or the suit in Ready Player One, the film where he's wearing the suit and things touch him, either ladies or explosions, and he feels it. What? I mean, that's a haptic suit, right? I think that's the idea. So what do you do? It massages you in whenever you get an email notification or something. Or is it exclusively?
Maybe. You'd be getting a lot of massages then, I think, Ron. James, it comes with a collapsible table where you can have your entire computer set up on your lap, effectively. So
Right.
You've got a keyboard and a mouse right on your lap, and then you've got the screen wrapped around your head.
Right.
What do you reckon?
I mean, obviously, it's undeniably it is quite cool. Like the renderings of it, you do think, yeah, that is pretty cool. But like even before lockdown, quite a sedentary generation. The idea that we now don't, never mind, don't leave an office, don't leave a chair, and can have that sort of whole setup and just inhabit this sort of faux realistic environment. I don't really like it. It's quite dystopian. It's quite Black Mirror-ish, isn't it? You could.
Are you feeling uncomfortable about seeing mine and Rom's faces on a 180-degree LED screen a few inches?
Oh yeah, extremely. And so I had a look at it, and so it's a rollable display.
Yeah. And
LG brought one out recently, and it was $87,000 right for just the screen. So whether I like it or not, I'm not sure. I'll be rushing out.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because in the article, Razer, the company that has put forward Project Brooklyn, didn't reveal the cost of this chair, but expect it to be, quotes, insanely expensive.
It's one of those products, isn't it? If you need to ask how much it costs, then you can't afford it.
Yeah. Actually, in seriousness, no, that is the reason this is interesting, is because of that rollable display, right? And do you remember back when flat panel TVs first came out, and 4K TVs, and they were sort of cruise ship sort of levels of expensive, and you couldn't do it. But now they're completely ubiquitous, and you pick one up for a few £100. I think this is the beginning of that. You see these signs at things like CES, and then eventually we can say these rollable displays, flexible displays, and so on are going to become quite ubiquitous and normal a few years down the line. That's quite exciting, because all the huge number of applications you can imagine for that once it becomes cost effective for people to actually buy them. These seats might just be normal, even though we're kind of being a bit silly now. When they're cheap, you can just attach them to the back of your chair. It might just become a normal thing, because VR makes you feel sick.
I do hope it doesn't become a normal thing, because that sort of the detachment of reality and work and normal life has become so blurred already. The idea of sitting on one of those stations, it makes it feel like it could become a lot worse even.
Yeah,
So
you almost imagine
Yeah.
sitting in your front room, you and your wife sat in two of these chairs, communicating through this screen, even though you're sat in the same room. It's going to be you're going to be inextractable from this this kind of seat, I think.
Yeah, constantly reminding your kids not to touch the display while they're eating their lunch. Get your greasy fingers off it. No.
That's $87,000. Don't touch it.
Well, to make a serious point though, like if we imagine, I think all of us agree that remote working is here to stay, whether full time or part time going forward. We do need to, I guess, optimize our home work environments, and obviously this is very kind of futuristic, but there's definitely a case for this kind of thing, isn't there, James?
Oh yeah, there definitely is, and any technology that is able to make people's lives easier working from home is going to do well. I'm just not sure it's this product, but I think the market for home working is obviously going to explode over the next couple of years. Common wisdom says that people aren't really going to go back to the office 5 days a week. There's going to be this sort of hybrid model. So being able to have a proper office at home, a proper kit, it's going to be a real growth market. But I'm not sure about this one.
Yeah, I agree with you, James. Definitely a Black Mirror episode, I think.
Yeah.
Right, the last one. This is something that I always just think is just so ridiculous. It's the Cadillac EV toll. Now, obviously, that means nothing. This is an electric autonomous personal air taxi.
Right.
I mean, let's just James, can you ever see yourself in your lifetime traveling in an autonomous air taxi?
I don't think so. People will say, well, of course you don't. But these sort of concepts or technologies have been kicking around forever, haven't they? We were supposed to be doing this already. And I just think, I'm not sure if it's ever going to be viable. And
why?
Look at the autonomous car market at the moment, which is far more realistic than personal flying electric taxis. Far more money poured into it. And what you see in the autonomous car market at the moment, you saw Uber sort of getting out of the game last month. And I'm actually writing a piece for it for the next issue of Digital Bulletin. The last 5% is always by far the hardest bit, actually taking all that concept and then putting it into practice. And I just think with concepts like this, if they can't get autonomous cars to work at the moment, and I'm still not sure if they ever really will, if they'll become a mass market thing. There will be concepts and there will be areas where they happen, but to actually everyone on the road being autonomous cars, they don't even know if they'll be able to do that. So the idea of people flying around in sort of autonomous electric taxis in airspace is just, if we can't get autonomous cars to work, how on earth would you ever get something like that to work?
Yeah, and I think a telling line in this article is at the bottom where it says General Motors, which owns Cadillac. General Motors isn't committing to production, let alone citing a time when we might
basically it's a couple of drawings and a cool video.
Rom, I'm expecting you to make the case now for autonomous personal flying taxis with electric batteries. I reckon you will.
Well, I do think that they are. Then there are enough people working on this. There's a lot of companies working on this sort of stuff. That means there's a lot of clever people who've thought about the business case for it, who are pretty confident that it's worth investing a ton of money in. I wonder. I don't think it's ever going to be something that's accessible to a lot of people, but it might be really handy for certain applications. A taxi, probably not. An emergency vehicle, maybe. And all it is really is an extension of the drone type technology that's already, is on the near horizon, just, with a person in it rather than an Amazon package. So I don't think it's unrealistic. And actually, the biggest drawback has been how do you get the batteries to work in a way that you've got enough energy density in the batteries and that it doesn't take crazy amounts of time to how do you make them light enough, and then how do you recharge them quickly enough? All of that's changing really quickly. In fact, just today I saw an announcement about some new battery technology that's just been proven at scale that you can recharge these batteries in 5 minutes. So that's all transforming. The next decade we'll see the electrification of transport generally really embed itself. This is perfectly possible. Will people ever willingly, jump in one of these things just to get down the shops? Also, the infrastructure isn't really there for it either in any mass sense. If I was going to get in one of these, I'd want to take it to McDonald's or the corner shop, or I'd want to take my kid to school. I'm not sure that's ever going to really be practical. Without, I don't want to lawnmower a bunch of school kids with some fan blades. I mean, that would be a bit harsh, wouldn't it?
I'm imagining a helipad on top of a McDonald's for flying taxis.
Right. But yeah, no, I do think that this is valid actually, and there are big companies like that who are developing these concepts and investigating and investing in the technology, not necessarily to make something like this, but they know that it's going to be a thing. So they want to have the expertise and the skills and the patents and all the rest of it in order to be playing a part in the industry as it evolves.
Yeah. James, what do you just thinking about these products, kind of all of them really? What do you think the purpose of CES really is, and why do companies pitch these quite kind of what you might think unimaginable and unrealistic things? Is it all about publicity? Are there other sort of factors at play? What do you think?
I think publicity is definitely one. Hype is another. CES has become the show, hasn't it, or the exhibition to be seen at, to make a splash with. I think that certainly with CES as well, you position yourselves in the mind of whether it's consumers or investors as being really innovative and really forward thinking. So it's about placing your company there, isn't it, as being a leader or an innovator within technology. I think that's what it comes down to. People want to be seen to be there, and it does seem to be the case that the more outlandish the concept and product, the more column inches or time or on podcasts such as this you get spoken about. So in that sense, they've done their job, haven't they?
Yeah, none quite so ridiculous as a robot cat. Which, to be honest, I didn't even give it any more credence than that. I just glossed over it. But you're both dog owners, I know. How about a robot cat to throw into the mix, Rom?
Well, I mean, cats are a bit like robots anyway, aren't they? Just sort of slightly evil ones. They're like mini Terminators or whatever, and they turn up every now and then to feed off you, and then just disappear to murder things, and then they come back with the bodies. Like, what is this thing going to go and do?
Yeah, who knows? Who knows? Well, listener, I think you'll be glad to hear that what we're going to do is move on from this from this conversation. But there are obviously loads of places online where you can read up on CES 2021 and all of the gadgets and tech that emerged. There were some fairly big things actually from some of the big chip and processor companies out there as well. So it wasn't all about gadgets. We'll return. We'll be back. We'll offer a smart smoothie. We'll be back after this short break.
Find us as Digital Bulletin on LinkedIn, Facebook and Instagram, and at Digi_Bulletin on Twitter.
For this month's case study section, we are going to review our project with Green Flag, which was published in the January edition of Digital Bulletin. Green Flag, which is part of insurance giant Direct Line Group, is one of the UK's biggest roadside recovery providers. If you break down in your car, they sort it out for you. Now, Green Flag wants to move from a telephony-first model to a digital-first model, which means it needs a fairly substantial upgrade to its technology architecture. We're going to discuss Green Flag's digital transformation story in more detail, but first, here's the company's managing director, Dean Keeling.
Fundamentally, Green Flag is and always has been a good company. It's got a great model. We've got people who are passionate about customers, and we go the extra mile for our customers. But I think it's fair to say we've done that with capabilities that are 20 and in some cases 30 years old. Really, we need to now make this generational leap into having an operating model that's fit for purpose for what the next 10 years are all about.
So, Rom, coming to you here, we've got the old legacy challenge, the classic thing that we talk about a lot. But I think in the example of Green Flag, right, the potential gains from this kind of digital first approach that they're looking at are massive, aren't they? If you imagine a company that is based wholly around telephones and that kind of technology, to move to a digital infrastructure that would deliver a far, far better customer service, this really is kind of a business transformation, isn't it?
Yeah, it's root and branch. The Green Flag is a really interesting company that's got it's a really great brand as well, more than anything, here in the UK, because they've got a very honest backstory, in the sense that there were major automobile associations, if you like, that people were used to relying on to help them out in case of emergency when their cars conked out. Green Flag came along and said, "Hey, look, we've got loads of independent, garages and workshops all over the place. Let's just hook them all together into a network, and we can provide that as a kind of membership option." And people love that. They've got a great, very loyal customer base. But that's really human. That's really kind of belts and braces, local human stuff. And they've built themselves a legacy of systems, but as you say, especially telephony based, that helps them to run all of that. But now they want to do way more. They've got all of that sorted. Now they want to give themselves options to provide a whole load of new products and services. And that's how fundamental it is. As a company, they can't necessarily very easily develop new products and services at all, or change in terms of what they're able to offer to their customers, without addressing this kind of technology question at the heart of it. And so that's really what it is all about, and that it cuts right to the core of the whole business. It's not just a technology story. It's about everything the company hopes to achieve over the next decade or more.
Yeah. James, we talk about customer-centric industries a lot. This is obviously one, isn't it? Green Flag customers are often in kind of an acute need. So in any kind of advantage that the company can gain in delivering a better service for them is one well worth doing, isn't it?
Yeah, it's one of those, isn't it? Like a insurance policy that when you take it out, or when you sign up for it, you rather hope that you don't have to use it. But I've certainly been there, and when it happens, it can be unnerving. So you want to know that you can reach the company easily, that you can get information from them easily, and that they'll be there as quickly as possible. And I think that by going digital first, they're reacting, aren't they, to the change, to how customers work, how they want to sort of liaise with companies that they're dealing with. And I think that what I got out of it was a digital transformation. I think Rom said it's a company-wide thing. What I got out of it was that it's really helping Green Flag, because it's helping it to make better sense of all its data that it has to hand, and dig in sort of trends and analysis, which is obviously hugely important when you're thinking about sort of breakdown and recovery, and when do you need most people on call and that sort of thing. But obviously it also helps the customers as well, because they can stay in context. So when you've got a digital transformation which benefits both the business and the customer base, that's sort of like, I don't know, sort of lightning in a bottle, really. That was the main thing that I got out of the story.
Yeah, and to completely take a new approach to those two things, customer service and business kind of performance, is brave when you're an established company, and a company that was doing well. Green Flag started this project a couple of years ago. It was a successful company at that time, and it was growing, and it had great customer scores. I think it's the Net Promoter Score, they call it, and their Net Promoter Score was really high. But it was the MD Dean Keeling joining the business who really came in and saw, look, we have a business that's good, that's working, that people are happy with, our employees are happy, our customers are happy. But in 10 years, is that going to be the case? And I think it takes quite a lot of foresight and ambition to start a program like this. They're only 2 years into it. I think it was Jeremy Bristow, who's the chief product manager for Green Flag. He said that the last 2 years have got them to a position where they've done a lot of kind of back end stuff. They're now at a position where they're able to deliver the same service they were able to deliver 2 years ago, but in a completely different way. The key now is the next kind of 3 years, and adding, as Rom said, building out an ecosystem of products and services that go far beyond just helping somebody in a breakdown. They want to have a much deeper relationship with their customers. And I think it's a really interesting story. Now, for a bit more context, Green Flag has discarded its kind of legacy systems, as we've said, and built from the ground up a new serverless platform out of AWS. So this is all cloud native. It's already launched a bunch of AWS services to improve its offering to customers. But technology change of this size also requires a rethink when it comes to people and process. One of the most interesting parts of this story, in my view, is Green Flag's insourcing of its IT team and the introduction of its Scaled Agile for Enterprise operating model, or SAFe. This way of working has been so successful that it's now being rolled out across the entire business, including in commercial teams, in marketing teams, not just in technology teams. So it's really interesting detail. And here is Chief Technology Officer Shaquille Butt talking a bit more about the people and process side of transformation.
Our architecture is actually based on a number of discrete platforms that are built, which link together and operate as an overall ecosystem. And each platform is linked to a specific domain, technology domain. And if I then overlay on top of that our Scaled Agile for Enterprise, or SAFe, operating model, it then meant that I was able to allocate a designated Scrum team to each technology domain, which then had its own discrete platform that they could own and build and maintain. So I have a Scrum team that looks after our website. I have a Scrum team that looks after our customer-facing mobile app. I have a Scrum team that looks after our rescue platform, our claims engine, if you will. Another team that looks after pricing. And each one of these different platforms is completely self-contained. So that's great, because that ticks a lot of boxes from an Agile perspective around empowerment, autonomy, ownership, etc.
Now, Rom, we know historically a lot of IT has traditionally been outsourced, but over the last kind of decade, we're seeing a lot more kind of insourcing of talent at companies. I think Green Flag now has, I think it's over 100 people in its technology team to look after it. And as Shaquille was saying in that clip, people really kind of focused narrowly on very specific elements of its technology architecture. When we live in a world now where technology has become so complex, across clouds, across various different environments, various different networking capabilities, complex tech needs looking after, doesn't it? And I think this is a perfect example of that, of Green Flag bringing in some very, very talented people. I know recruitment has been a challenge for them, but it's also seen them be able to bring in some seriously kind of talented people into a roadside recovery business. That's a trend we're kind of seeing, isn't it?
Yeah, it's certainly not the first time we've heard about the SAFe methodology and how you can deploy Scrum teams, and then there's a whole bunch of kind of personnel and other topics around that, like servant leadership and various other things that can help all of that to work. So Direct Line, like a lot of other companies that we've spent time with, have that recruitment challenge, as you've talked about, which actually in essence ends up just driving up the cost of these people that you're kind of insourcing. And so, why, if that's going to be a very expensive thing, why would these companies do it? Well, the reason they do it is because working in an agile way, having microservices that you can kind of plug and play continuously so that you're constantly moving means that you can extract way more value out of those teams, because they're able to work and deliver new things far more rapidly than an old kind of top-down hierarchical bureaucratic waterfall technique or whatever. And so that's what the 2 years has led up to, presumably for Green Flag. It's very reminiscent of something we peered under the lid at Deutsche Telekom last year, and they were doing very, very similar things on a kind of different sort of scale. I think there were 10,000 IT people at Deutsche Telekom, but actually exactly the same thinking, which is to say, let's build a whole new way of people working and make it in-house, and then we can give them new technologies to work with, and it all adds up to being a net gain in value by quite a long way. And actually, you end up with a lot happier people, both on the inside and on the outside in terms of customers, because you're able to deliver much more quickly to them and provide a happier kind of place, a more challenging place to be sometimes, but also a more rewarding place to be. Historically, a lot of people who worked in technology would especially in big organizations, would find themselves working in fairly closeted structures where you could imagine things getting a little bit frustrating because it would take 18 months or 2 years to go to market with anything. And now it's going to take a matter of weeks, potentially, depending on what it is. So it's really interesting to see how advanced Green Flag's strategy and thinking is, and all of that. Certainly in relation to other things we've done and seen.
Yeah, and I think if you want to go and read the piece, there two of the other companies that we got involved in this story were Contino and ECS, and both of those companies have had advisory roles with Green Flag on how to basically upskill their Green Flag's people in kind of cloud native working, and there's some really interesting detail on that. James, it's all well and good in sourcing IT teams. Obviously, the end result is often optimal, but the road to get there is very difficult, isn't it? Because there just aren't enough people. As you know, this is a topic we cover in Digital Bulletin every month, pretty much, isn't it? How the skills gap is one of the biggest threats to kind of the technology industry as we move forward.
Yeah, and it's one of the few areas which really hasn't been affected too much by COVID. Obviously, the roles that are in demand maybe are slightly different because of it, but that skills gap is still very much there. We know, for example, that cyber attacks are up markedly over the last year, and the types of attacks that are happening mean there aren't enough cybersecurity staff at the moment, or highly qualified cybersecurity professionals. So that's an area where there's a massive chasm between what companies can bring in and what they need. And that's only going to get worse because the working from, we're still getting used to this sort of hybrid model of working from home and office, and the networks are obviously different because of that. So the threat has changed, and you'd say that cyber attackers, if numbers are to believe, have been able to jump on that, and enterprises still sort of mobilizing to know how to deal with that. So there's definitely that security gap there. And that sort of relays into cloud infrastructure. You're talking about being cloud native, and many more companies are now. And there simply aren't enough IT professionals who are skilled enough to build cloud infrastructures which can utilize tools like automation, which companies need more and more, and AI. So those roles are in massive demand. And you are right, it's something that we speak about quite a lot in Digital Bulletin, most months really. But I still haven't really, I'm not convinced that I've really heard the answer to it yet. We talk about enterprise having to be closer to academia to make sure that graduates are coming out with those right skills. We talk about companies having their own in-house academies is really important as well. But we still don't have anywhere near enough of them, and it's certainly a buyer's market out there. And you can understand why the really skilled IT professionals, why some of them prefer to contract, because they can demand huge rates, and they can ensure that the work is different. They can work for different companies and really choose their own projects, really. So it's something that they have that as an industry, technology hasn't, I don't think, really got to grips with.
Yeah, I think the truth is it's going to be the triumvirate of industry, academia, and government that is going to have to somehow come together and solve this. Okay, folks, that was good. We're going to conclude the Green Flag chat there. You can read the full case study, all 3,000 words of it, over on digitalbulletin.com, and watch the videos as well, of course. Wow. Meanwhile, we'll be back after this.
Power up your day with the Bulletin Brief, the latest news, insights, and opinion delivered straight to your inbox.
For this month's pod, I caught up with John Bates, CEO of Eggplant. Eggplant uses some pretty sophisticated technology to test and monitor software. As businesses grow more and more reliant on their software, fast but thorough testing has become vitally important. In the interview, John talks about how artificial intelligence is changing the game and shares insights on Eggplant's fascinating partnership with NASA. But first, I asked him to define bad software.
Well, bad software is software that stops you hitting your desired business outcomes. So that can be, providing a poor customer experience. It can be functionality problems, it can be performance problems, it can be software that can't handle load, software that makes errors. But it's if for your business to be successful, you want to offer an amazing customer experience that helps you meet and exceed your desired business outcomes, beat your competitors, release new features quickly to keep ahead of the game, and support loads of platforms. And anything that goes against that means that your business could be being held back by bad software.
We hear a lot about amazing software, especially in this digital age. But how much bad software is there out there? Is this a common problem for businesses?
Well, there's actually just been a very interesting set of articles based on some statistics that were reported from the Consortium for Information and Software Quality that said that in the USA alone last year, businesses lost $2.1 trillion from bad software. So there's quite a lot of it about.
And what is, maybe in more detail, what is the kind of impact on businesses? What are the consequences of deploying bad software, do you think?
Well, it's everything from reputational damage. So if for example, I think if you're sort of I think Just Eat, for example, in the UK, had, I remember of sort of, a couple of years back, they had a blip in their, they're a food online ordering service. And I think, they have several thousand orders every minute. And I think they were out for a couple of minutes. So they lost hundreds of thousands of pounds and had reputational damage from people losing orders. Stock exchange, there's been numerous examples of, everything from flash crashes, dating back to 2010 and earlier, but, of algorithms going wrong that have lost billions of dollars in the market, and we could go on in healthcare, in defense, in manufacturing. It's all kinds of different reflections of business outcomes: lost revenue, lost reputation, lives lost, and so on and so forth. So that there's real implications from bad software.
So with that in mind, I guess you'll tell me that software testing is more vital than ever and a hugely important thing.
I think it is. I think it's absolutely critical now, but you've got to look at it from a different lens. So I think let's turn it on its head and say it's not just about preventing damage, which is sort of a compliance function. I think software testing now can be a profit center. So if it can help you expose the weaknesses in your product, address them, you're addressing the weaknesses in your business. If it can show you how you should and could get an amazing customer experience and amazing performing products, then it can help you take a leadership in the market. So not just compliance, but a profit center.
Okay. That's interesting. So how is artificial intelligence, for example, and advanced technology helping deliver that, do you think?
Well, that's something we've done very uniquely in Eggplant, which is a great example of using artificial intelligence. So traditionally, in software test automation, people write scripts that exercise certain elements of your program. So they run those scripts every time they release a new version of their software or they roll out a new version, even if they're not building their own software. So if you're in a hospital, for example, you're still getting new custom versions of your electronic medical records and and new versions of the Windows platform you're running on, and so on and so forth. So even if you're just a user of software, you still have to test it for your environment, your custom environment, or your building software. Every time you roll out a new version, you run these scripts, and they would be the same thing every time. So you may or may not catch a problem. You just have to hope they're a problem that you'd anticipated. So with artificial intelligence and the way Eggplant has approached this, you have a learning engine that monitors, for example, what's changed since the last time, and will actually automatically analyze the product and build tests that will exercise those things that have changed. It will also monitor how people are really using the product and build tests automatically to exercise the most the most common user journeys through a product and the most valuable user journey. So you might get all your revenue on an e-commerce site from one particular journey. We better make sure we test that, particularly if it's changed since last time. And then they will also learn about where bugs are likely to be and build tests to hunt down bugs. So it's really, artificial intelligence is doing two things in that context. Number one, it's actually trying to expose the weakness of your product and build tests to automatically test those so that you can expose them before they're exposed by the external world. And secondly, it's building tests to test the most valuable areas of your product, which is what you really want to do. And then there are other ways. We also use artificial intelligence, for example, to behave like a human. So to do customer experience testing, you want to actually automate and have AI-powered bots that use the software in the way a human would. And so instead of just looking at the code, you can actually use the running application on any platform and understand the images and text on the screen, identify objects there, be able to read the text, and to be able to make sure everything looks right. So is it functioning right? Is performing in the right amount of time? Is responsive? Can handle load? And is usable? Has good user experience? So there's a couple of ways there, both through the sort of modeling and orchestration, as well as using the software automatically, that AI can help with.
So it sounds like, John, that AI is really offering a big leap forward in this area of software testing. Is that fair to say?
It absolutely is offering a complete game changer for this area. I mean, no longer is this, oh yeah, you know, we run some tests, it's fine, ship it. It's now about, actually, we've battle tested this and exposed any weaknesses beforehand, and we've gained a market leadership position from the way it has automatically given us feedback about what we should do to be a leader.
John, many technologies have found some critical use cases during the COVID-19 pandemic. Maybe talk about how software testing has helped during the pandemic.
Yeah, well, we were terrified when, like everybody. I mean, it's been a nightmare. If you're, in the travel or transport or hospitality industry, it has been a nightmare, and I really feel for those businesses. But we were all scared at the beginning, and looked at this and thought, wow, is this going to really hurt the business? But actually, we saw many organizations having to accelerate their digital journey. Indeed, what that led to for intelligent software test automation was, an increased uptake, because businesses had to release new features quickly. They had to make sure they were battle tested, because now the number of online users had grown radically. The features that were being exercised had grown radically, because it was a lot of behavior moved from being partly on premise, in the real world, retail, for example, and partly online, to all online. And so it was, real battle testing. And we also work with people like, health organizations to make sure that their online consultancy and their track and trace and all of those kind of capabilities could handle the load of this new era. So it was a step change, as it was for many businesses in the digital era in the COVID pandemic.
Yeah, it's great to hear how Eggplant adapted. A big kind of client of yours is NASA. Maybe we want to talk a little bit about the work that you do with NASA.
Yeah, well, NASA is very cool. They've published some papers about their use of Eggplant. But if you can imagine something like the NASA Orion space vehicle, that is the vehicle that they're planning to go to Mars in within the next decade. So it's full digital cockpit, unlike previous spacecraft where you've got paper manuals on board. This is fully digital, and so you're interacting with a digital cockpit. And rather than have astronauts or humans exploring the capabilities on the ground to try and test it, NASA can have AI-powered bots exploring both the known paths, but also the unknown unknowns before they encounter a problem on the journey to Mars, which obviously is more, having seen Apollo 13 and the like, there's obviously problematic. So the more you can expose with intelligent analysis, intelligent real usage before you head off, the better. And that's exactly what NASA's doing.
Sounds like we've got a universe of possibilities here, quite literally, John. What do you think, final question, what do you think kind of the future then is of software testing? Is it that you can imagine kind of a fully autonomous, fully automated, predictive environment that you guys are building and that will become the norm for software testing, I guess?
Exactly. And Eggplant is now part of a larger organization called Keysight Technologies. And what we're seeing, Keysight Technologies is very powerful in the testing of hardware and networks area. But what you can imagine here is that a combination of hardware and software solutions to be able to test, if you like, the cyber physical domain. So imagine if you want to test a 5G network, for example, or an electric vehicle, then rather than just testing components, the physical layer, what throughput are we getting, or the hardware, what power consumption are we getting, or how much power is a handset consuming. If you can connect all of these hardware and software components and bring in the business outcomes, the customer experience, which leads to revenue, and if it's not good, it leads to churn. And can we orchestrate all of these with an intelligent AI-powered layer, which can switch in, emulation at various layers as well as real usage at various layers to sort of say, okay, if I bring in 10,000 users in this cell, what's the impact on customer experience? Or if I use, a simulated base station, but a real handset, what is the power characteristic usage of that handset when I take it down from 5G to 3G? And all of these kind of, so it's really about moving from testing components to testing the business holistically, and being able to have AI assistance in doing that, to be able to say, for a whole telecommunication network, how can we be the leader? Have we battle tested this? And doing the same in defense and aerospace and healthcare and retail. So this is the future: holistic, end-to-end intelligent testing.
Right, we are done, everyone. Lots to point you in the direction of. Issue 7 of the Tech for Good magazine is out now, where we learn more about a COVID-19 mobile education campaign which hopes to reach 1.5 billion people and eliminate the problem of disinformation. We also have brand new episodes of the Tech for Good podcast and Fragmented Reality, our sister pod, plus loads of exclusive and in-depth insights over on digitalbulletin.com. I'll wrap things up by thanking my guests. James Henderson, thank you.
Thanks very much. Really enjoyed that.
And Romilly Broad, thank you very much.
My pleasure.
And we'll be back next month, listener. Catch you then.
That was the Digital Bulletin podcast, brought to you by Bulletin Media. Listen and subscribe to a range of podcasts on Spotify, Apple Podcasts and Stitcher. Plug in for news, features and case studies on the very latest in enterprise technology and digital transformation.